The first time the metal door slammed behind me, the sound didn't echo. It swallowed. It felt like the building itself inhaled me, and in that moment, standing in a county holding cell that smelled like bleach and old sweat, I realized something I still can't explain without my hands shaking. My wife didn't just send me to prison, she erased me. The officer said my name like it was a typo. Danielle Cross. I nodded. He looked down at the papers again. Fraud, embezzlement, conspiracy, corporate theft. I actually laughed. A small sound, sharp, uncontrolled. Because that company, the one they said I stole from, it was mine. I built it. I signed the first lease with a pen that leaked ink onto my fingers. I slept on the office floor. I ate vending machine dinners. I watched the logo get printed crooked on our first batch of business cards, and I still kept one in my wallet like a trophy. And now, my wife stood in the courtroom and told them I'd robbed her. She didn't cry. That part hurt more than anything. When the judge asked if she wanted to speak, she didn't tremble. She didn't look at me. She looked at the jury. She used me, she said. She hid transactions. She falsified documents. I trusted her because she was my spouse. Spouse. The word tasted bitter in my mouth. I leaned forward, my wrists cuffed, my pulse hammering. Lena, I whispered. She finally met my eyes. There was no rage there. Only calculation, and that was when I understood. This wasn't a fight, this was a takeover. 3 years earlier, we met in a wine bar in San Diego that charged $12 for a glass that tasted like regret. She was sitting alone, typing on a laptop, her heels kicked off under the table. I asked, "Is that seat taken?" She looked up and smiled like she already knew my answer. "Only by you." We talked about business, about growth, about risk, about how exhausting it was to be the smartest person in the room and still be ignored. She said, "I like women who build things." I said, "I like women who understand them." 2 months later, she moved into my apartment. 6 months later, she was my wife. Everyone said it was fast, but when someone sees your ambition and doesn't flinch, you mistake it for love. Cross Dynamics started in a borrowed garage. Data optimization, corporate systems, compliance tech. Boring words, but the contracts weren't boring. The money wasn't boring. By year 5, we had 50 employees and clients I couldn't pronounce. Lena became CFO. I made her partner. I put her name on the building. I put my trust in her hands, and I never counted my fingers afterward. The first sign was small, a delayed payroll. She said, "The transfer's slow, bank issue." The second was quieter. A vendor called me directly. "We haven't been paid in 2 months." The night before sentencing, I lay on the thin mattress and stared at the ceiling. And that's when I thought of my father, the man whose name I don't use, the man whose blood runs in me like a secret. The man who taught me one rule before he disappeared from my life. Never let anyone think you are the last door in the room. They should never know there's another one behind you. Lena didn't know. She didn't know I wasn't just an entrepreneur. She didn't know I wasn't just self-made. She didn't know that Cross Dynamics was not the biggest thing my family owned. And she didn't know I was the only child of a man who never lost. When the judge said 5 to 8 years, I didn't cry. I watched Lena. Her lips curved, just slightly, enough to be seen, enough to be remembered. In prison, time doesn't move. It drips, and every drop sounds like your name. I worked in the library. I read financial law, corporate restructuring, asset recovery. I memorized the rules that had buried me, and I learned the ones that could unbury me. I wrote letters, not to Lena, to someone she thought was dead to me, my father. I hadn't spoken to him in 12 years, but I wrote, "She thinks I'm finished. She thinks I was the last door." The reply came 3 weeks later. One sentence. I will open the others. That was the day I stopped being afraid, and the day she started being wrong.
Prison teaches you patience the way storms teach trees, by breaking you first. I learned how to sit still, how to listen to footsteps and know whose they were, how to keep my face empty when my chest was screaming. But most of all, I learned how invisible a woman becomes when the world thinks she's already finished. That invisibility became my weapon. My father's first move didn't touch Lena, not yet. He touched the ground beneath her. 3 months after his letter, I was called to legal visitation, not my public defender, not a court-appointed anything. A man in a tailored suit that didn't belong in that building. Gray hair, calm eyes, the kind of face that never rushes. He slid his card across the table. Richard Hale. The name meant nothing to me. He said, "Your father sends his regards." My hands started shaking before I could stop them. Is he alive? The man smiled faintly. Very. He leaned forward. You are not an inmate here. You are an asset temporarily misplaced. I swallowed. Lena framed me. We know. Then why am I still here? Because removal is less effective than reversal. The next weeks, I was moved. Not freed, moved. Different unit, library supervisor, access to records, privileges that looked like coincidence, but weren't. Every file I touched taught me something. Every regulation I memorized became a blade. Outside, Richard worked, quietly. He didn't attack the charges. He attacked the structure that supported Lena's victory. Shell companies, hidden loans, corporate guarantees she never disclosed, funds she moved through me and then back into accounts that did not belong to Cross Dynamics, accounts she controlled but didn't own. One afternoon during visitation, he said, "Your wife believes she owns the company." I smiled for the first time in months. She doesn't. No, she owns what we allowed her to hold. He placed a document between us. My breath caught. The original incorporation, the silent partner clause, the controlling interest tied not to my name, but to my father's. My voice cracked. She never saw this? She didn't need to. She assumed. Assumed I was alone. Yes. I thought about Lena in our glass office, signing deals, firing people, sitting in my chair, calling it hers, and I felt something colder than anger. I felt anticipation. The first tremor came 6 months later, a routine audit, unrelated to me. Public, unexpected. 3 of her major contracts froze. Cash flow tightened. She called me that night. First time since the trial. The phone buzzed in my hand like a live wire. "Danny," she said. Her voice was different. Not smooth, not certain. "Why are you calling me?" "Because something's wrong." I laughed softly. "You took everything from me, remember?" Silence. Then, "They're investigating." "Who?" "The board, the banks, I don't know. It's like the floor is shifting." I closed my eyes. "Funny, that's exactly how it felt in the courtroom." She whispered, "Did you do something?" I said, "You did," and hung up. From that moment, she started losing time. Deals delayed, partners cautious, credit lines questioned, employees nervous. Every system she'd built on my name began to demand proof, and she had none, because she'd burned the bridge she was standing on. Richard visited again. "She's moving assets." "Of course she is." "She's scared." "She should be." He nodded. "Next phase?" I leaned forward. "Let her think she's winning." Prison didn't feel like a cage anymore. It felt like a watchtower, and I could see her from here, running, building, grabbing, not knowing the ground beneath her was already hollow. And the thing Lena still didn't understand is that I wasn't planning to take the company back. I was planning to take everything she thought she was. There's a moment right before a structure collapses when it looks stronger than ever. That's where Lena was. From the inside, she was panicking. From the outside, she was expanding. New offices, new branding, new hires, press releases about visionary leadership, articles that called her a survivor, a woman who rose after betrayal. I read every one of them in the prison library. I watched her rewrite me in public, and I let her, because lies need space to grow before they split. My father's influence didn't move loudly. It moved through paperwork, through shareholders who suddenly remembered clauses they'd forgotten, through investors who began asking for audits they'd never cared about before, and through one name that kept appearing on confidential documents: Hale Holdings. No one connected it to me. No one connected it to him. Lena didn't either. She welcomed them. She shook hands, she signed, she smiled, and she handed them access. Richard showed me the first internal report. She's been using corporate funds to secure personal leverage. How much? Enough to make the fraud she accused you of look modest. I let out a slow breath. She really believes I was the end of this story. She believes you were the weakness. I smiled. I was the shield. The real mistake came on a Thursday. It always does. People get tired on Thursdays. They get reckless. She authorized a merger, fast-tracked, quiet, desperate. She sold controlling interest in Cross Dynamics to Hale Holdings. She thought she was buying safety. She was selling herself. Richard slid the final document across the table during visitation. Your father now owns the company. My hands closed around the paper. No, he always did. The news broke 2 weeks later. Stock shifted, leadership questioned, emergency board meeting. Lena called me again. This time, her voice wasn't smooth. It was thin. They took it from me. Who? Hale Holdings. They outvoted me. They're restructuring. They're freezing my authority. I said quietly, that's how ownership works. Her breath hitched. You planned this. I leaned closer to the glass. I survived it. She tried to fight. She sued, she accused, but the documents were clean. Her signature was everywhere. Her choices, her approvals, her transfers, and her name appeared on accounts she could not explain. The same kind she'd once put mine on. One night, I received a file in the prison mail. My father's handwriting on the envelope. Inside were copies, transactions, dates, routes of money that circled back to Lena. My case, my proof, my exit. Richard said, we're ready to file for appeal. When? Soon. Good. I looked at the walls around me. They held me long enough. Lena didn't come to the first hearing. She sent lawyers. I watched them sweat. I watched the judge's eyes change. I watched doubt move into the room, and for the first time since my arrest, I felt the door shift. But the story wasn't finished, because power doesn't disappear quietly, and neither does betrayal. And Lena was not done trying to hurt me.